Hi, I'm Tristia Marie, and I thought we would chat about this movie I just saw called The Secret Garden. I'm going to start with my general thoughts on the movie before I get into specifics, because that's just what makes sense to me personally. First of all, I think it's a good movie. I would watch it again. I think it's worth watching. Just to let you know, there will definitely be lots of spoilers in this video, so if you do want to watch it, because it is a good movie, then you should do that before watching this video. Because otherwise, I'll be giving away really big spoilers. So either way, I do think it's good, but I think it's probably on the lower end of good, but we'll get to that. So the reason why I think this movie is just good is that though things are happening in the movie, it also feels like nothing is happening most of the time, which I know doesn't make sense, but I'm going to try to explain it. So either way, luckily that's my only complaint other than the end, which I'm gonna get to that in time. But either way, I'm not fully sure why it feels that way. One idea I thought of, that might improve the movie and make it seem less like nothing is happening even when things are happening is making John Shooter, the antagonist, seem extra crazy. And he is crazy, don't get me wrong, but he's a very focused crazy. And I think for the purposes of this movie, we need someone who's more, off the wall. And John Shooter's, motive was, he was only, talking about the story that Mort supposedly plagiarized the whole time. He never had any other little things he could have, been having as reasons for doing everything he's doing, and I feel like there should have been a bit more to it that could have added to the craziness, even just some random things that don't make any sense, just to add to that crazy. And while I understand how the whole story, plagiarizing the story thing is a big part of the plot and connects throughout the whole movie, I feel like they could have added to it. And, I feel like this would, changing these things would also improve the ending, which you'll understand once I explain that with you. But before we talk about specifics, I do want to add that Johnny Depp does do a really good job at playing Mort, in both the way he is throughout most of the movie and the way he is at the end. I think that, any other actor probably could have made this character what he was or as interesting as he was, because I think that this character, being more of an introvert type of character, it would be hard to portray to where he's both likable and interesting unless you are someone who's a very good actor and can pick up on little things like Johnny Depp can. Although I would like to add that I don't think Johnny Depp is a good person. I just thought I should clarify that before, people complain that I'm reviewing a movie that he was in. But I do want to clarify that. I believe his ex-wife or whatever she was. I do, however, think that Johnny Depp is a great actor, which is why I'm talking about him and the movies he's in. And I think movies are worked on by so many people to where, it does just suck to just totally discard a movie because of one person. So either way, now I'm going to go more in order talking about the scenes and moments I feel worth mentioning. It begins, opening with Mort, the main character, driving to a motel in winter. He's all angry and he finds his wife cheating on him. This is a really cool way to start a movie. First of all, it looks really cool, and you can already see Mort's character even though there's no dialogue in this scene, and I think it's a great backstory kind of thing, and it just, adds that, drama to it, I guess, which, is a good thing throughout this movie. I feel like they could have done it a bit more throughout the movie, but, it's really a really good way to start off the movie. And I think it's just after that, kind of when they're doing the credits, they have this little scene where we hear lines from a book that I think are kind of repeated throughout the movie, which I like, that are talking about a man who buries his wife, who he presumably killed. He buries her in her garden, that you can see through a secret window, hence the title Secret Window. And right here, I was fairly sure how this was going to end, and I was both right and wrong about the way it was going to end. I wasn't totally sure because of the things we do see in the beginning that made me be like, okay, maybe we don't. I was like kind of confused, but did end up kind of turning out that way. Then we have a scene of Mort, who is a writer who's trying to write his next book. He's talking to himself and being oddly angry at the housekeeper. And then a man, John Shooter, comes in claiming Mort stole his story. And I thought this was a great scene. I like seeing Mort's character kind of play out, especially since there's not a ton of interaction with other characters other than like the dog in this scene. You really get to kind of get an idea of who he is, and he's a very odd character in a good way. And it's very interesting, and we really get opened up to like what the movie is going to be early on with like John Shooter coming in quite early on. Over the next while of the movie, we see John Shooter as a threat, which is effective, but there's a little bit of the movie where we question whether or not Mort did steal the story, which I don't think really works, honestly. I feel like they could have left that little bit out where, like, we almost, like, they make us question it, because that's not really, like, a huge part of the movie. It's just in there for, like, a few seconds, and it, like, I don't know. It almost makes us not root for him because he's already kind of, like, an odd character that we, like, kind of question, and then, I don't know, I just didn't really appreciate that little bit there. I feel like they could have left that out, easily cut it out. There are a couple scenes early on where there's a lot of tension. We're really scared of John Shooter. He killed Mort's dog, which kind of shows us that he'll just do anything. He's been in the house without Mort knowing. And there's even one, like, scary and funny scene where he's not even in the house, but Mort breaks stuff in his bathroom trying to attack John Shooter because he thinks that he's there. And then whenever there's a scene where Mort talks to his ex-wife or her lover, it's great because he's so snarky. It's really funny, and it just builds upon his character. And it just really adds to the story, with that whole drama and whatever of, the whole divorce and stuff. But I would like to add to my complaint earlier on, of the movie, like, feeling like nothing is happening, man, I can't talk, while a lot of stuff is actually happening, because, until later on in the movie, the threat of John Shooter only seems to come at night, really, which breaks the tension. Like, once you're in the day, you're just like, okay. Like, even if there's all this great drama and great character stuff going on, you don't feel scared, which I feel like you should feel. And I feel like, and even in, like, the night scenes, you're just like, well, he's just gonna go away by day, and it gets rid of that tension. So, I think that's, this movie's big sin, breaking the tension, which is probably flat out what my whole problem with this movie is, really. You could have the threat still looming, have some little bits of John Shooter and daylight throughout, sprinkled throughout the movie, and still have him being snarky to his ex-wife's lover. You can do both, and I don't think this movie knows that, unfortunately. And I think that would just improve the movie so much if they just kept the tension going, but they don't. But either way, Mort ends up finding out that his bodyguard and one of the locals has been killed by John Shooter, and that he has planted evidence to make it seem like Mort did it. I love this scene. Now we have unbreakable tension, and from here on out, it isn't broken, and it would have been almost impossible to do so because of the situation we've been presented with now. And either way, so he faints, and then John Shooter comes, like, really close to him, and it's, like, probably the most threatening he's been throughout the movie. It's a really great scene. And then, we're also reminded of this magazine that has, like, Mort's story in it that will prove his innocence, right? And when, Mort mentions the fact that he's gonna get it, Shooter is, like, scared this time. Like, before he didn't believe it, and now he feels like he's been doing so much damage and crazy things for nothing, and you can tell that he feels crazy. I really liked that scene. It was very interesting. And, like, Mort gets the magazine and finds out the pages that had his story in it had been cut out, even though that's impossible. He had just gotten it out of the mail. That really adds to Mort's crazy, I think, and I think when you would especially appreciate it on, like, a second watch, like, after you know the twist. Then you'd just be like, oh, yeah, like, only Mort could have done that. Not to spoil the ending or anything. And then after this, we have, the most iconic scenes from the movie, coming up. And this movie has a few, in my opinion. So it starts out, Mort is talking to himself like he has throughout the movie, which I didn't fully realize. I mean, I did realize it a couple times, but I think that it does happen more often than I fully, thought about. I thought maybe it was more just, a way to have dialogue in a movie that doesn't have a ton of characters in it, rather than actually, for the plot. I thought it was just, a movie device when I saw it, so it was good that it wasn't just that. But either way, so Mort is talking to himself, and this time a bunch of other Morts, keep popping up, and it shows that he's crazy. We're starting to be like, oh, what's happening? It's a really good scene. Again, he has that same kind of, snarkiness and whatever, almost. It's not quite the snarkiness, but if you've seen the movie, I feel like you know what I mean. Just, it's very his character with the dialogue between the different Morts. And, he puts on Shooter's hat in the mirror, and, it's great. It's great fun. It's a very fun scene. And then what I would say is probably the most iconic part of the movie is this. When his ex-wife is walking throughout his house because she was, worried about him or whatever, she sees Shooter written everywhere, and eventually she sees him looking down with the hat on, and on the walls it says, "Shoot her." And it's I love the way it's shot, which I know makes me sound like a very, hoity-toity, cinematography, but, that's not something I usually am just the cinematography, but, the way they shot that was just so, iconic, and it's all of a sudden, this very dramatic thing, and it looks very dramatic, and it's very cool, and I think part of the, the way it looks is part of, how iconic it, seems to me. So yeah, and it's so scary, it's just beautiful imagery. And now we know for sure that, he is the killer. We kind of knew that, a few lines before, when he was finally you are John Shooter, kind of, that whole thing. Okay, and so now that we know that, I want to say a few things. First of all, I love movies from a killer's perspective, probably more than the average person. That is really my bread and butter, to be honest. I mean, particularly if we know the whole time, like an American Psycho or something like that. But stuff like this is good too. Another similar thing that is also my bread and butter is having one of your main characters or big supporting characters whom we have sympathized with or attached to, or have become attached to in some way, turn out to be a killer. I love that. That is the shit. That's what Scream does perfectly, and that's why it's my favorite movie. But either way, back to Secret Window. So we find out that he's the killer, and I have a few complaints with that. So I understand why he would want to kill his ex-wife and her lover. But he kills this random, neighbor and his bodyguard whom he was close with. I don't think this is believable with everything we've been given in the movie. Because especially based on the fact that Mort created this whole, other person, John Shooter, which was really himself, to, do the killing for him to get away from actually killing people himself, because, he clearly, doesn't want to do that. It makes it seem like he's not killing for the fun of it. He's just killing for revenge, or because he feels like he needs to, which he wouldn't have any need or want to kill the neighbor, or especially his bodyguard. And with the whole bodyguard thing, we get a kind of friendship between the two to, whatever extent. And then we throw that away there with him killing him for seemingly no reason. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have had those two men die. I just feel like we needed a reason. Because I really like that scene where he finds the bodies and stuff. Like I said, it creates a lot of tension and great parts of the movie. But I think we should have had something telling us more, more that he has some kind of bloodlust or is completely insane. Which you could argue they do show that he's completely insane, but I don't think they do it to where we'd believe that he would just kill anybody who hadn't done anything to him. Which brings me back to the point that Shooter should have had more of a motive. And more of a threat that would add to the idea that Mort or Shooter would just kill anybody due to bloodlust. Sorry, I have to look on this paper for the rest of the time because my computer stopped, like, working. So, I also recently saw Shutter Island for the first time, which also has, like, a similar type of twist. Basically at the end we find out that our main character is crazy, and we've been seeing everything from his crazy perspective the whole time. And I feel like that twist works so much better in that movie, because first of all, the contents of the movie are absolutely bonkers, that they already sound like something a crazy person would come up with, which I feel like Secret Garden seems more realistic, and just the way they, you know, make everything to where it doesn't seem crazy. Like, I know that everything that happens is crazy, but, like, the way, like, they made the movie, it doesn't seem crazy. And I feel like they could have changed that, and I feel like that could have improved it as well. And also in Shutter Island, they double back and explain exactly why he would retreat into a fantasy world, like, feel the need to do that, and how it correlates, you know, this fantasy world, like, correlates to the real world, you know, and, like, what, like, parallels are, like, what, you know, is the equivalent of each thing in each world, basically. And it makes it so much more of a believable twist than in Secret Garden. And, like, there's, you know, motive that makes sense for him, you know, thinking everything. You know, either it's, you know, that he's crazy, or, you know, because of the whole, like, thing, you know, wanting to escape his past and stuff. But in Secret Garden, we don't really have that, because I do think probably part of the reason why they didn't, like, you know, fully, like, double back and explain everything is probably because they wanted to keep up a very, you know, like, fast-paced ending, which they do, which, you know, probably to keep up tension, like I mentioned. But I feel like if they're gonna do that, they need to have somewhere where they explain it. Somewhere. I don't know where, but they needed to do that to make it more believable. But either way, back to the next part of the movie, we have Mort as Shooter, because now he's kind of fully gone into this personality, and we see him, you know, as that, you know, this other kind of person. He attacks and kills his ex-wife and her lover outside. It's really exciting. He, like, fully, like, you know, just, like, grabs his ex-wife from the vehicle, and it's so, I don't know, like, violating and just, like, really, like, rough. There's something really just interesting about that. So it's really exciting. He's a killer you almost root for, when he's killing them, because, I mean, you've, you know, been rooting for him this whole time, and you know, you kind of like him to some extent, not that you know, think that, like, killing is a good thing, but you're just kind of, like, rooting for him. I don't know. And either way, that whole scene looks great. I like that he killed them outside, especially since he ends up, you know, burying them in the garden. It really just, I don't know, it's just really interesting and pretty. And yeah, like I said, he buries them out in the garden, and of course mirrors the story that has been, you know, being repeated throughout the movie. And it has a poetic air to it. I like that. It ends with him, like, talking to the police about how important, you know, the ending is. And as he fulfills the exact, like, last lines of the book with, like, eating corn, and, you know, then showing, you know, the, you know, like, the corn, you know, and, like, basically saying the line that, you know, they're, like, buried under there or whatever, like, he won't even know what happened to them or whatever the line is. It's poetic cinema. Like, it's just poetic. It's beautiful. And I like that they repeat that throughout, because it has this energy to it and makes you, like, be like, ooh, the ending is gonna be so good. The ending's gonna be so good. And then it is. And like I said, the ending could have been even, like, better, but it was still really good once you actually got to the end and you, like, have already had a little bit of time to digest and be like, okay, so he is, you know, the killer and whatever. And yeah, so watch this movie if you haven't. Tell me below your thoughts on it, and what movies you would like me to talk about next. I, you know, would love to watch some new movies if you have any suggestions, and tell you the things I like and dislike about them, or maybe I like all of them, maybe I hate, you know, everything about it. I don't know. But yeah, so just let me know. Thanks for watching. Bye!